welcome to the Eat Your Content podcast. I'm your host, Rich Herrera. This is your podcast for all things food and pop culture. Just a reminder to follow me on socials at Rich Herrera and at Eat Your Content, and to make sure you like and subscribe on your podcast player of choice to be notified of when new episodes are coming up. Quick programming reminder for the next few weeks. This is a series of interviews that took place during a one-day virtual event called Potapalooza. I kind of describe it as speed dating for podcast hosts and podcast guests. We all kind of gather in a room and we match up, and we have about 5 seconds to look at each other's bios and see how things shake out. It's been a lot of fun. It's been like herding cats trying to get everybody together, but I am very pleased to have Dr. L on here. Dr. L is a neuroscientist and a multi-hyphenated bunch of other things that I didn't have time to scroll through his bio about, but I'm going to let him talk all about it. Very interested to talk about some neuroscience and some other things related to brain power and what foods we can eat to maximize that. Dr. L, thank you for coming on to the podcast. It's been a day so far, so I appreciate your time and devoting the day to coming on to a bunch of different podcasts. Welcome.
Thank you, Rich. I'm delighted to be here, and you're definitely speaking my language with food because that's where it all starts. So let's get going.
Sure. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about your background. Like I said, I had a few minutes to look through your bio. You're a neuroscientist, but you also do some mental health things. So I kind of want to talk about both sides. Tell me a little bit about your background and what you do.
Absolutely. So I have been on a long journey. I ran my private practice for 10 years. It was an award-winning practice. I helped families who had children with autism spectrum disorder. So ADD, ADHD, Asperger's, Tourette's, autism, dyslexia, all of these things kind of fall into that alphabet soup, basically.
Hmm.
Now, in addition to, but towards the end of my experience with private practice and healthcare, I wanted to expand my reach and go beyond the brick and mortar of a clinic. So I wanted to kind of take this into the online world. And it was 2006, 2007. So everybody laughed and said telemedicine is not a thing. And of course, I was, I guess, 15 years ahead of time because when COVID happened, everybody realized that's the only option they had. Luckily, though, over the past 10 years, that's what I didn't listen to people and I still did my own thing anyways. And I brought the information that I had, that the advice that I was giving to many of the parents and the patients to the world at large, because I figured that if it can benefit them, it can definitely benefit the average family and the children with the developing brain. And here we are, 10 years later. I've been a consultant to the United Nations. Uh, I run my own nonprofit organization called Foundation for Optimal Beginnings. And of course, I've had various things like Role Model Maker and the Amazing Parents Network that I've created over the years as well.
Wow. Just a life full lived already. And doing telemedicine before telemedicine was cool, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I got to tell you,
Um,
I telemedicine, I think I prefer more than going to the doctor in person. It's just easier. You just dial up and get what you
You'll
need.
be amazed how many people are so nervous about being inside a doctor's office. I literally have had patients pass out on me simply because I was wearing a white coat. So
Yeah. Wow.
a full disclaimer, my background actually is in chiropractic, so I'm not a medical doctor, but I did my postdoctorate in clinical neuroscience, and that's how I ended up doing what I did.
Sure, sure. So we only have a few minutes. So these back-to-back interviews are very tightly spaced. And if I had the time, I would love to talk about your entire career. The going to the UN sounds incredibly amazing. And I'm sure people can find that story. We'll let you share all that where people can find you and everything there at the end. But the part about your bio that caught my attention, because I do talk about food, and my audience is foodies and people that eat. You're a neuroscience and you talk a lot about healthy eating and what with brain capacity and brain power. We talk about what kind of foods can people should people be eating and make more conscious choices of to better help their brain. Like we hear a lot in the news about doing the mental things, crossword puzzles and doing those mental activities to keep your brain sharp, especially as we get up there in age with dementia and Alzheimer's, and to stave off those types of ailments. But not a lot maybe goes into what we put into our bodies, the fuel that powers it. So, what kind of foods should people be looking for and making a more conscious choice of to help with that?
Absolutely. And that's a great question, is a great starting point because when people want to do something for their brain, they're like, okay, what exercise, what activity? And oftentimes, before you can ask your brain to do something, you have to make sure that you give it the raw ingredients, the building materials, the energy source, all of those things, so that it is up to the task. And if it is not up to the task, then you end up with things like your brain crashing, your mood affected, and all kinds of other symptoms that ends up affecting the rest of your body because guess what? The brain controls the function of everything else. One of the things that during the information age I realize is that people are oftentimes really frustrated with the conflicting and the vast amount of information that's always being thrown at them and the fad diets and everything else that's going on. So when I actually had my own health challenges and I wanted to do it, I realized that it was very aligned with what I was doing in private practice in the sense that if something is aligned with biochemistry, basic chemistry of how the body functions. And if something is aligned with how the brain develops and functions, then these two systems, the crossover of them, that's got to be the truth. That is the part that I can put my money on and say, this part, if you do, is going to benefit you. And over time, that's what mastering healthy eating became for me and for my clients, basically focusing on that part that addresses your brain health, but also addresses your gut health, and ultimately from there, your function of the rest of your body. So there are three principles that really are important before we do. Number one, you got to understand how your body works, because if you do not understand that, then you're persuaded in ways that could be contradictory to basic science and basic biology. The second part is you got to understand your habits. Those habits are built on your genetics, anthropology, society, and also your personal habits over your lifetime and your lifestyle, basically. So if you do not have the clear understanding and appreciation or from where you've been, then many of the stuff that you see out there, even if it's healthy, might not be actually applicable in your lifestyle. And then last part is when you've got these, then it's a matter of substituting the bad ones for the good ones. And that's where everybody's like focused. But if you never got the step one and step two, you're going to run into problems when you have to make choices.
Right, right. So you talked about fad diets, right? So are there, and like you said with the internet, it's the wealth of information in the palm of your hand, but with that comes the good and the bad. A lot of misinformation, a lot of quote unquote health experts out there, spewing nonsense, really. And it's kind of hard to filter through some of that noise. So when you talk about fad diets, are there any kind of fad diets that you're aware of that maybe people should stay away from? You have like the keto diet, you have the carnivore diet, you have the Atkins diet, so on and so forth. Have there been any fad diets that you've seen, past or present, that people have done that you, as a neuroscientist and healthy eating expert, would advise people? Hey, you might want to kind of steer clear of this particular one.
That's again another good question. I did a lecture at Johns Hopkins and Kennedy Krieger Institute when I said when patients get desperate, they look for answers in places where anything could be there, basically. So, as physicians, it was their role to make sure that they investigate the details so that they put the right options for people. And I say this because not everybody is up for taking medications. Not everybody is interested in the dry Mediterranean diet or whatever else medicine has been subscribing for X number of years, right? So we need to have options so that it's workable for people. And the idea that, you know what, it's just too difficult to modify people's lifestyle. So let's just give up and use pharmaceuticals or whatever, or processed products to go ahead and get the objective done. It just doesn't work because Mother Nature, our human bodies are far more intelligent and they adapt and adopt new ways of coping with the stresses that food brings for us. So I tell the patients, do what works for you and gives you results. But for me to recommend a diet, it needs to make sense scientifically for me based on that formula that I gave you earlier. So over time, the ones that I would say, instead of talking about the millions of diets that's, have come and gone, I tend to gravitate towards the ones that tend to resonate the most. And they follow into certain principles. So if I may, I'm going to go over those principles for people
Hmm.
so that they understand that. And then whatever diet that you are contemplating, ask yourself, is this something that I can go ahead and apply those principles and it resonates? And if the answer is yes, then go ahead and try it out. But don't just try it out because your friend did it, because your friend and you might have completely different metabolisms or
Hmm.
different allergies or sensitivities. And then of course the disclaimer that always consult with your healthcare provider so that they know what you're up to, and if some complication happens, they can kind of intervene in time to keep you safe. That being said, the first principle is that your body has performance cycles and has rest cycles. And it's based on your neurology of sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So your mom used to tell you, do not go and jump in the swimming pool right after eating, or don't go running. And you've learned this maybe the hard way, that you got stomach cramps or muscle cramps
Hmm.
because your body has enough resources to do one or the other, not both. So you can either turn on your machinery that starts the metabolism, your digestive system, and all of those, or it can supply your muscles with blood and resources so that they can run and perform at that level. So when you mix this up, that's going to cause problems. So understanding those cycles is important. And for each of us is a little different, because some of us work, 9 to 5 jobs, and others work like seriously intense shifts. And then they have a period that is like just off basically. And you need to understand that about yourself and your lifestyle when you're deciding what kind of a lifestyle you should have when it comes to your nutrition.
Hmm.
The second part is that when it comes to macronutrients, the big parts of your diet, the biochemical process for breaking down and absorbing and utilizing carbohydrates as one macronutrient versus fats is completely different. So we are omnivores, so you're supposed to eat anything. So I would never say eat this and not the other thing. But you need to be able to cycle through them based on your lifestyle and based on your body's abilities, evolution, and anthropology included. So for that, we need to understand that carbohydrates give you short bursts of energy and burn out fast. They're the high octane fuel. Fats are much more long term, sustained kind of performance. So, depending on your lifestyle, you have to determine which one of these is important. And then the one thing that you need to always keep in mind is that we are designed to have protein with every meal. That is the part where you have amino acids that basically run everything, can be used as source of energy, can also be as part of the building blocks. So regardless of whether you're emphasizing carbohydrates or emphasizing fats, protein needs to be accompanied with it. And either of those is going to also help with the process of utilization of the protein as well. So very important to always keep that in your mind before you start thinking about what kind of carbohydrate you're craving, or what you should stay away from. You should consider, what source of protein am I going to? Also, you're going to realize that depending on geography, like Nordic countries, the places where plants don't grow, these people have gotten used to utilizing fats without utilizing a whole bunch of carbohydrates. And they don't have any deficiencies. So your body is totally capable of living without carbohydrates. And at the same time, the tropical places they have more abundance of resources. So it's much easier to gather fruits and berries and nuts and things like that, and be able to live on carbohydrates and not have to rely on hunting, where yes, you might be able to chase down a rabbit, but at the same time, there might be a tiger right behind you chasing you down, right? So you don't need to risk injury or that hunt. So those things become important, that the metabolic cycle of fats versus carbohydrates, and utilization of proteins, making sure that you understand your body has that rest and digest versus performance cycles. So we do not want to be doing rest and digest stuff during performance cycles. This is a big reason why at 11 o'clock you need something to pick you up, or at 2 p.m. you want to take a nap, right? So we want to make sure that we keep these cycles apart. And that also determines when you should eat, not just what you should eat, but when you should eat. For
Hmm.
most people, when you talk about healthy eating, the mind automatically goes to what you should eat. It has nothing to do, like what you should eat is far less important as when you should eat and how you should eat. So the how part, I just shared those two principles, and the when part kind of comes from the same thing. If you are performing, then you need to go until your performance is done before you eat again. And you need to give enough time for your metabolism to process, rest, and digest the food. So 6 to 12 hours after you put calories into your body is processing. That is not the time for you to perform. So for most people, that's not going to work. And uh, after that period is done, then your body can actually utilize things like fats. So that's where keto diet becomes really, really useful. So I wouldn't say keto diet is bad because you can use it properly when you apply these principles to it. And I wouldn't say carbohydrates are bad because if you want short bursts of energy, then you can go ahead and eat frequent meals 4 to 6 hours every time and just make sure that you get that sustained energy for bursts of performance. But mixing the two of them up, when you mix the fats and the carbohydrates, that's going to cause problems. When you're eating, when you should be performing, that's going to cause problems. And then go from there. And then the last part, as far as what you should eat, especially in modern lifestyles, we all have heard of inflammatory and anti-inflammatory. The number one prescribed medicine that we have in our society is anti-inflammatories because we lead an inflammatory lifestyle. So we need to allow to introduce foods and activities into our life that tends to be anti-inflammatory. We all know that you need to rest and digest more. Well, yes, sleep is very important for your brain development, brain performance. Oxygenation is also important because if you're taking in food, the food needs to be burnt with oxygen to produce energy. So if you have problems with breathing for whatever reason, that's going to affect your performance as well. It's not just about the breathing. And then lastly, activity, as in physical activity, is essential for your brain performance. So if you've been sitting all day, that's not going to work. But for the sake of nutrition, those principles of how you eat, when you eat, are more important than what you eat. But when you go to what you eat, separate the carbs from the fats, make sure that you take more of the anti-inflammatory foods than the pro-inflammatory foods. And those are pretty known, well known. So people understand the difference between white sugar versus vegetables, right? So my recommendation is when you have to perform, use roots, use leaves and stalks. When you have to rest and digest, use fruits and roots. So that's for the carbohydrates. For fats, always go if you can plant-based. Always go whole food and not processed. Avoid vegetable oils and artificial oils. So those are the big ones. And then for protein, utilize it from a different variety of sources as much as possible and non-genetically modified. And understand that our human society use it when you are um, your focus is on storage, basically. And for some people, that is the case, that you eat so that your body stores. And every time that you put food in your mouth, that's what happens. Your body has to first store it before it can expend it. If you were to expend everything that you're eating, you would burst into flames. It just doesn't work that.
Wow. Wow. Interesting stuff. A lot of great information. Dr. L, what's your go-to meal? When you sit down to eat, what kind of meal do you enjoy?
My go-to meal usually starts with a protein, and then I always tend to emphasize fats over carbohydrates. So salmon, for instance, with some leafy greens or some stocky stuff. So broccoli, cauliflower, Caesar dressing, ranch dressing. So again, fatty stuff, olive oils. And then as far as carbohydrates, as I just mentioned to you, it tends to be stocky and leafy. Avocados, great. Olives, olive oil, great. So those are the things that I tend to lean towards basically. And from time to time, bacon, but it tends to be more inflammatory. I make sure I keep it away from carbohydrates. So whenever you're having fats, it is very important to stay away from the carbohydrates because together they create poison in your system. So it creates inflammation, whether it's in your immune system, your lungs, your heart, and your cardiovascular system, or your bones. It will create aches and pains for you.
Awesome. Awesome. Good advice. Dr. L, where can people find you online, find you on socials for more information on all the great information you just talked about today?
Absolutely. Well, I focus a lot on the family side of things, so uh, you can always find me when you look on Amazon. There's a book called Parenting Owner's Manual. So check us out. You can get that book for yourself.
Awesome. Awesome. Dr. L, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, if you like what you heard, leave a review, leave a comment below on what you thought the favorite item here that we were talking about today. And don't forget to like and follow and subscribe on your podcast player of choice so you know where new episodes are going to be coming out. Dr. L, thank you so much for your time. We got to go. We got another back-to-back interview that we have to do, and we got a long day ahead of us. So thank you again so much for your time today.
Appreciate it, Rich. Thank you, guys.
All
Bye.
right, thanks. Thanks for listening to Eat Your Content. If you like what you hear, please consider supporting the podcast through my merch store on TeePublic. Get great quality items like t-shirts, hats, mugs, and more, all sporting the vibrant Eat Your Content logo. Go to teepublic.com/user/eatyourcontent for more great items, and thanks for your support.